Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a really interesting stack of material you sent over recently, all looking into these incredibly tiny gold particles.
Gold nanoparticles.
Right.
Yeah.
And how they're being explored in, well, the fight against cancer.
That's right. It's a really fascinating field, and the sources, they give a great overview, I think, of the huge potential here.
Yep.
But also the advantages they might offer over current treatments, and importantly, the real challenges researchers are still working through.
So, okay, our mission for this deep dive is basically to unpack all that. We want to get into what these sources are actually telling us about how these, like, microscopic gold bits could really change things in cancer treatment.
It's a field that's always moving, isn't it?
Feels like it, yeah. And these nanoparticle approaches seem right at the, the cutting edge.
Absolutely. And what stands out right away, I think, is that it's the unique properties of these gold nanoparticles, GNPs, let's call them their physical and chemical nature, that makes them so versatile.
Versatile how? The sources mention more than just treatment.
Yeah, the research points to potential in diagnosis too, not just therapy. But maybe let's stick with the treatment side first.
Okay, yeah, good idea. Let's dive into treatments.
Yeah.
One big area the sources kept bringing up was something called photothermal therapy. PTT.
Yes.
PTT.
Sounds pretty clever.
It is actually. It's one of the most heavily researched applications. The basic idea is that these GNPs, they can absorb specific types of light.
Light?
Often near-infrared light. And that's key because near-infrared can actually penetrate a bit deeper into tissues than some other wavelengths.
Okay.
And then the nanoparticles very efficiently convert that light energy straight into heat. Right there.
So the heat is generated right at the cancer cells. That's the idea.
Yeah.
The sources really stress this selective destruction, trying to hit the cancer but leave healthy stuff alone.
Exactly. That precision is sort of the holy grail here. If you can design the GNPs so they gather mostly in the tumor cells.
And then you shine that specific light just on that area, you generate enough heat locally to kill those cells, hopefully minimizing damage everywhere else.
That level of targeting, I mean, that sounds like a huge potential leap. But it wasn't just heat, right? The sources also talked quite a bit about using GNPs for drug delivery.
Yes, that's another major avenue, acting like those tiny taxis you mentioned earlier.
Right.
They can be engineered, usually by changing their surface chemistry, to basically carry chemotherapy drugs or other therapeutic agents directly to the tumor.
And the hope there, at least based on these sources, is that maybe you could use, I don't know, lower overall doses of these really strong drugs.
Potentially, yes. Lower systemic doses.
Which could mean fewer of those really harsh side effects people often get with standard chemo. It's about, like, concentrating the firepower right where it's needed.
Precisely. It's all about improving that therapeutic window. And then moving beyond direct attack with heat or drugs, the research also touches on their role in immunotherapy.
Helping the body's own immune system fight the cancer. How do the sources say they might do that?
Well, a couple of ways are mentioned. They might help trigger the release of certain molecules, signals that kind of kickstart the immune response nearby.
Okay.
Or they could be used to deliver immune-boosting agents right into that tumor microenvironment, sort of waking up the local immune cells to the threat.
Interesting. The material also briefly mentioned a few other uses, which again shows how flexible these things might be.
It does. It highlights their adaptability. They're being looked at as carriers in gene therapy, for instance, to get genetic material into cells.
Right.
And also potentially enhancing traditional radiotherapy, making cancer cells more sensitive to the radiation.
Which, again, could mean maybe using lower radiation doses overall.
That's the hope, yes.
Yeah.
Another way to potentially reduce side effects.
So, okay, pulling back a bit, what's the big picture win here? If you boil down the research in these sources, what are the main advantages everyone's chasing with GNPs?
The material really emphasizes, I'd say, 3 key things. First, that highly targeted therapy we talked about. Being able to tweak their surface so they ideally stick just to cancer cells. That's huge for minimizing collateral damage.
Yeah, that seems critical.
Which directly leads to the second point.
Yeah.
The potential for improved treatment outcomes. Concentrating the therapy, making it more effective where it matters.
Okay.
And third, as we've mentioned a few times, the possibility of reduced side effects by potentially lowering those systemic drug or radiation levels.
Those are, I mean, incredibly attractive potential benefits. But, as with any of this cutting-edge stuff, the sources were also quite upfront about the hurdles,
Yeah.
the challenges.
Oh, absolutely. Very realistic. Despite all the promise, there are definitely significant obstacles researchers are, actively working on.
Like what were the main ones?
Well, potential toxicity is one.
Mhm.
Even though gold itself is generally seen as pretty biocompatible at high concentrations, or depending on the specifics of the nanoparticle design, there are still safety questions to fully answer.
Okay, safety first. Makes sense.
Then there's just the sheer complexity of making them. Their synthesis, making these nanoparticles consistently and reliably, needs really tight control. Standardization is key.
And that complexity probably leads to cost issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Currently, it can mean a potentially high cost compared to many existing treatments. Scalability is a big factor there.
And for some therapies, like that PTT, the light therapy,
Mm-hmm.
getting the light deep enough into the body, that's still tricky, isn't it?
Yes, limited light penetration through tissue is a definite challenge for tumors that aren't close to the surface.
Right.
And another thing mentioned was aggregation. Sometimes the nanoparticles can clump together once they're in the body.
Which would mess things up, reduce effectiveness.
Exactly. It can affect how well they distribute and how well they function. So preventing that clumping is another research focus.
So it sounds like the sources wrap up by saying, look, there's tons of ongoing work focused on improving safety, making them cheaper and easier to produce reliably, figuring out better delivery to avoid clumping.
Mm-hmm. And getting light deeper.
Getting light deeper, right? And also exploring, combining these GNP approaches with other treatments.
That really does seem to be where things are heading. Combination therapies. Using GNPs alongside existing drugs or radiation or immunotherapy to create more personalized and hopefully more effective cancer strategies.
So when we boil down this deep dive into your sources, what's the takeaway? The promise of using these gold nanoparticles, it's genuinely exciting, isn't it? That core idea of making cancer therapies much more targeted, potentially way less toxic, it's incredibly powerful.
It is. And those advantages, the precision targeting, aiming for better outcomes, reducing those harsh side effects they come through loud and clear as the major goals.
But the research is also keeping its feet on the ground. It's clear about the road ahead. There are these significant challenges that researchers are really wrestling with.
Definitely. Everything from ensuring they're truly safe in the long run to figuring out how to make them affordably on a large scale.
Yeah, and solving practical problems like stopping them clumping up inside the body, or that fundamental physics problem of getting light to deeper tumors for things like PTT.
Exactly. Lots of work still to do.
So thinking about how fast this field seems to be moving, based on what's in these sources, how might these combination therapies, the ones integrating GNPs, actually reshape how we approach cancer treatment in, say, the next 10 years? And maybe a tougher question, as these really complex engineered nanotechnologies get closer to the clinic, what sort of new ethical questions pop up? About fairness, access, applying them, definitely something to think about.